Hey everyone, I've noticed that many of you are enjoying the videos, but most of you haven't subscribed yet. We're super close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your support could help us reach that milestone. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really makes a huge difference and helps us keep creating more awesome content. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. I used to think love was supposed to be this permanent, unshakable force, a place where you could let your guard down, knowing you were safe. With Lisa, I never doubted that. We were supposed to be unbreakable, a perfect family, a perfect marriage. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. It all started as the usual picture of happiness when we landed in Hawaii. It was the first vacation we'd taken as a family in years, and I wanted it to be special. We were celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary, a milestone that felt more like a victory. I had pushed hard at work, secured a promotion, and now I could afford to splurge on this trip. Lisa seemed happy when I told her about it. I remember the light in her eyes when she heard the words Hawaii and anniversary, but the way she'd said, "Maybe I'll just need some space to relax after the flight," left a strange taste in my mouth. Space to relax. It sounded innocent, but it was the way she said it, calm, almost detached, like she was already somewhere else. We arrived at the resort and everything was perfect. Palm trees swayed in the warm breeze, and the ocean stretched out in front of us, an endless expanse of blue. The kids ran ahead, excitedly pointing out the pool, the beach, the towering cliffs in the distance. But as I watched Lisa's face, I noticed something odd. She looked distracted. I shrugged it off, blaming jet lag. But small things began to pile up. That night, as I lay beside her, I caught her typing furiously on her phone. Her fingers moved with a speed that only comes from hiding something. I asked casually, "Who's up so late?" "Just work stuff," she said, not looking up. Work stuff, always the go-to excuse. It made sense considering her job. Lisa managed a portfolio of high-end clients, most of whom were scattered across different time zones. But the way she answered, too quick, too defensive, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The next day we set out to explore the island, but something was off. I tried to ignore the tension, telling myself it was all in my head. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was avoiding me. She kept glancing at her phone as if waiting for a message that never came. At one point, I caught her staring blankly at the ocean, her mind a million miles away. "Hey, you okay?" I asked, slipping my hand into hers. She flinched, then smiled. "Yeah, of course." Just soaking it all in. The smile didn't reach her eyes. That's when I knew. But what did I know, really? Nothing concrete, just this gut feeling that gnawed at me every time she looked away. I tried to push it down, bury it under family activities and beachside dinners, but it kept clawing its way back up. On the third night, I found her sitting on the balcony, staring out into the darkness. Her phone was on the table next to her, the screen glowing with a notification. I watched from the shadows, heart pounding as she picked it up, reading the message with a small, almost imperceptible smile. "What's got you up so late?" I asked, stepping out of the shadows. She jumped, fumbling with the phone. "Oh, nothing. Just couldn't sleep." I nodded, my stomach twisting. "You've been on edge since we got here. Is something wrong?" She stared at me, her eyes wide and unblinking. "No, Jake. Nothing's wrong. You're being paranoid." Paranoid. That word echoed in my mind long after we'd gone to bed. Was I? She'd never given me a reason to doubt her before. But now all I could see were shadows and whispers, pieces of a puzzle I couldn't fit together. My mind replayed our conversations, our texts, searching for clues. Had she been pulling away before we even got here? Had I missed something? I started paying more attention. Little things jumped out at me. The way she would excuse herself during meals to take a call, the rapid-fire texting that always seemed to happen when I wasn't looking. I felt myself spiraling, doubts tightening around me like a noose. But I couldn't ask outright, not without proof. If I was wrong, I'd come off as a paranoid fool, accusing my wife of something unspeakable on our anniversary trip. If I was right, God, I didn't even want to think about what it would mean if I was right. One afternoon, while the kids were napping, Lisa said she was heading out to shop. She left the room with a spring in her step, and I decided to follow. I waited a few minutes, then grabbed my keys and trailed her through the lobby. She didn't go to any of the shops near the hotel. Instead, she took a side path and headed towards a row of secluded cabanas. I stayed far enough behind so she wouldn't notice me, but close enough to see when she ducked into one. I crouched behind a cluster of bushes, watching as she knocked on the door of the cabana. My heart hammered in my chest as a man stepped out, a tall, athletic figure with sandy hair. They exchanged a quick hug before disappearing inside. I stood there, my whole body numb. Everything felt distant, unreal. I wanted to burst in, demand an explanation, but something held me back. Rage boiled up, mingling with pain and disbelief. It wasn't until I felt the phone in my pocket that clarity struck. I could use this. If I wanted to know the truth, I needed proof. Not just for myself, but for what came next. I crept closer, careful not to make a sound. When I reached the window, I raised my phone and snapped a few photos. The blinds were partially drawn, but I caught enough to confirm my worst fears. They were kissing, wrapped up in each other like I didn't exist. I lowered the phone, heart pounding in my ears. The image on the screen blurred as tears welled up. I blinked them back furiously. I couldn't afford to break down. Not now, I had to think. This was no longer a suspicion or paranoia, it was real. I turned and walked away, forcing myself to breathe. Each step felt like 1,000 miles. When I reached the beach, I sank into a chair, staring out at the horizon. It was strange how calm I felt. The pain was there, simmering just beneath the surface, but so was something else, something colder, sharper, a resolve I hadn't known I was capable of. Lisa came back later that evening, smiling like nothing had happened. I played along, even cracked a few jokes at dinner. She didn't notice the tightness in my voice or the way I clenched my jaw whenever she looked at her phone. That night, as she lay next to me, breathing softly, I stared up at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. My wife, the woman I had trusted for a decade, had betrayed me. But I wouldn't scream or lash out. That would give her too much power. No, I would bide my time, gather every piece of evidence, and when I was ready, I would burn her world down. I glanced at her sleeping form, my lips curling into a humorless smile. She had no idea what was coming. The door clicked shut softly behind me, but it felt like a gunshot in the silence of the room. I stood frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs like a wild animal desperate to escape. There they were, Lisa and her lover, wrapped around each other, their laughter echoing like a sick mockery of everything we'd built together. She hadn't seen me yet. Neither of them had. My body trembled, but not with rage. No, what I felt was a calm, terrifying clarity. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. My hands moved automatically, recording a video of the betrayal unfolding in front of me. The camera captured everything. Lisa's flushed face, the way she caressed his arm, the look of utter contentment in her eyes. It was like she'd forgotten she had a husband, a family. Like none of it had ever mattered. I should have screamed. I should have kicked the door open, thrown myself at them, demanded an explanation. But I didn't. My voice remained locked somewhere deep inside, suffocated by a cold, calculating resolve I didn't know I had. This wasn't the moment to confront them. Not yet. I quietly stepped back, slipping out of the suite. No one in the hallway noticed me as I made my way down to the hotel lobby, the recording still fresh on my phone. My heart had slowed to a steady thud, each beat reminding me of what I'd seen, each beat pounding out the same question. What now? I found a secluded corner in the bar and ordered a whiskey. Neat. The amber liquid burned its way down my throat, but I barely felt it. I stared at my phone, at the frozen image of my wife with another man. His face was unfamiliar. Sharp jaw, dark hair, but the way she looked at him, that was a look I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I knew what I had to do next. I wouldn't be like one of those poor bastards who lashed out blindly, ruining everything in the heat of the moment. This needed to be precise, controlled. I pulled up Lisa's number and typed a quick text. Delayed with the kids? Be back in an hour or so. It was the kind of text she'd expect, casual and unassuming. It would keep her from suspecting anything. For now, I needed more information, more ammunition. I took a deep breath, then made my way to the front desk. There was a young woman behind the counter, scrolling through her computer. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady, almost calm. "Can you tell me if there's a guest registered under the name David? I'm meeting a friend, but I'm not sure what room he's in." She smiled politely and tapped a few keys. "Do you have a last name, sir?" I hesitated, thinking fast. I'd seen his face, but not much else. "I'm sorry, I don't." "He's here with my wife, Lisa Chambers." Her expression changed, just a flicker of something. Sympathy? Suspicion? I couldn't tell, but she nodded and checked again. "David Parker. He's in room 3 to you." I nodded, filing the name away. "Thank you." David Parker. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I took the elevator up, each ding of the floors ticking by, as if counting down to something inevitable. Room 312, the door was ajar, and the murmur of voices drifted out. Lisa's laughter mingled with his deep, resonant tone. I felt my jaw tighten, my hand twitching at my side. I forced myself to relax, inhaling slowly. I walked past their room like I was just a guest on my way to somewhere else. I kept my head down but glanced inside. I saw him clearly this time, David Parker. My stomach churned as I noticed how at ease he was in the space, like it was his room, not a place of illicit rendezvous. He had the kind of confidence that comes with familiarity. But I wouldn't approach him there. No, I'd confront him on my terms. I continued down the hall, back to the lobby, and settled at a bar stool, keeping an eye on the elevators. It didn't take long. 15 minutes later, David appeared, adjusting his shirt and brushing his hair back casually. I waited until he ordered a drink and found a seat by the bar before making my move. "David Parker, right?" I said, sliding onto the stool beside him. He looked up, surprised. His eyes narrowed slightly as he glanced at me. "Do I know you?" "No," I said, my voice low and steady, "but I know you. You're the guy screwing my wife." He blinked, caught off guard. "I don't bother denying it." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I've seen everything. I have pictures, videos. I know exactly what you are and what you're doing here." David's face hardened, a guarded look settling over his features. He glanced around like he was calculating who could hear us. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Neither do I, which is why I'm giving you one chance to walk away. Go back to your room, pack up, leave, and don't ever come near my family again." His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Good. He thought I was bluffing. Let him think that. The longer he believed I was just an angry husband throwing empty threats, the better. I stood, pushing the bar stool back with a scrape. "You've got until the morning," I said quietly, then turned and walked out. I wasn't surprised when minutes later Lisa came barreling into the bar, her face pale and eyes wide. She spotted me immediately and rushed over. "Jake, what? What are you doing?" I took another sip of my whiskey, then set the glass down carefully. "Sit. Jake. Sit, Lisa." She sank into the stool David had just vacated, her hands trembling as she reached out toward me. "I can explain." "Explain what?" "The fact that you're screwing another man while we're on a family vacation?" I let the words hang in the air, watching her face crumble. "You think I'm blind, Lisa? You think I wouldn't notice the way you've been acting? Sneaking around, lying to my face?" Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over. "I didn't. Jake, it's not what you think. I was lonely. You've been so distant. Don't you dare try to turn this on me." I leaned forward, the anger finally surfacing in my voice. "You did this. You destroyed our marriage. You betrayed me, our children, everything we've built." She sobbed, the sound raw and desperate. "Please, Jake, I can fix this." "There's nothing left to fix," I said coldly. I pulled out my phone and held it up, letting her see the video I'd taken. "I have everything I need, Lisa. The affair, the lies, every sordid detail. I've already sent it to our lawyer. I'm filing for divorce as soon as we get back. Her face went deathly pale. No, please, don't do this. The kids. I'm taking the kids. You'll be lucky if I let you see them on weekends. The shock in her eyes turned to panic, then fury. You can't do that. I'll fight you. Go ahead. I smiled, a cold, humorless thing. See how far that gets you? She stared at me, mouth open as if she couldn't recognize the man sitting in front of her. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe I was already becoming someone else. Someone she'd turned me into with every lie, every whispered conversation, every touch she'd given him instead of me. I'm leaving with the kids tomorrow, I said, standing. Stay. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. You'll need it. I left her there, broken and sobbing, but I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. I felt empty, hollowed out by the enormity of what she'd done. I walked down to the beach, the waves crashing softly in the distance. I dropped into the sand, staring out at the dark expanse of the ocean. My thoughts swirled like the tide, anger and pain battling for dominance. But beneath it all, something else stirred, a sense of grim purpose. She had shattered my life, and now it was my turn. I'd tear her world apart piece by piece until there was nothing left. The next morning, I packed up our things and left the hotel with the kids. I glanced back only once, catching a glimpse of Lisa standing at the balcony, her face streaked with tears. Good. Let her feel the loss. Let her understand what it means to have everything taken away. Because this was just the beginning. Back home, the world felt muted, like the color had drained out of everything. I dropped the kids off at my parents' house, plastering on a smile that felt alien and heavy. They didn't need to see the turmoil beneath the surface, the storm that was brewing inside me, growing darker and more twisted by the hour. Just need a couple of days to get things sorted, Mom, I said, avoiding her scrutinizing gaze. She nodded, hugging the kids close, but I could see the questions in her eyes. Take your time, Jake. We'll be here. I kissed my children on their foreheads, promising to see them soon. With every step back to the car, the weight of the betrayal settled deeper in my chest. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I pulled away, but I didn't cry. I hadn't cried once since it all began, not even in the privacy of my empty house that evening. It was like the part of me that felt pain had been cauterized, leaving only the cold, clinical determination to see this through. I filed for divorce the next morning, citing irreconcilable differences. It was a clean, unemotional statement that wouldn't give Lisa any warning about what was coming next. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation or a messy court battle. I wanted her to think she still had a chance, even a small one, to salvage her image or win something back. That delusion would make what I was planning even more effective. When the paperwork was done, I took a deep breath and did the one thing I'd been dreading. I called her. It went straight to voicemail as expected. Lisa, the divorce papers have been filed. I'll have my lawyer send them over. My voice sounded strange, almost hollow but steady. We need to talk about the kids. I'm sure you want to be involved, but right now they need stability. I'll be staying with them at my parents' for a while. Call me when you're ready to talk, but know that I won't let you hurt them the way you hurt me. I hung up, not waiting for a response. She'd call eventually, out of desperation or guilt. Maybe she'd beg, maybe she'd scream. I didn't care. I wasn't doing this for her. Every action I took from now on was for the kids and me. This was about control, about making sure she never had power over any of us again. Over the next few days, I gathered every piece of evidence I could. Phone records, emails, credit card statements. It was sickening, seeing just how far her betrayal had gone. Secret lunches, hotel stays, even gifts she'd bought him using our joint account. The more I uncovered, the colder my resolve became. I started reaching out to a few close friends and family members, feeding them carefully crafted bits of information. They were sympathetic, shocked, but none of them knew the full extent of what had happened, just enough to make sure everyone saw the cracks in the image she'd so carefully built. I let the details slip slowly, almost casually, like I wasn't holding on to a nuclear bomb of truth that could shatter her completely. Lisa tried calling a few times, but I never picked up. I read every desperate text she sent, every plea for forgiveness, but I didn't respond. I needed her to stew in the silence, to let the panic grow until she felt utterly alone. One afternoon, I received a call from an unexpected number. The voice on the other end made my stomach clench with a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite name. Satisfaction, maybe. Jake? It's Anna. I blinked, trying to place her. Then it clicked. Lisa's ex-best friend, the one she'd cut out of her life years ago. They'd had some sort of falling out over a business deal gone wrong. At the time, Lisa had painted Anna as the villain, accusing her of betrayal. It seemed ironic now, considering. Anna, I said slowly, what can I do for you? There was a pause, a hesitant intake of breath. I heard about what happened. I wanted to say I'm sorry. And I thought you should know I have some information that might help you. I frowned, leaning back in my chair. What kind of information? The kind that shows Lisa's been lying for a lot longer than you realize. Anna's voice hardened. There are emails, business deals that were off the books. Things that could really damage her reputation if they were made public. My heart pounded. This was more than I had expected, more than I could have hoped for. Why are you telling me this? Because she did the same thing to me, Anna said quietly. Took something I loved and burned it to the ground. I was her best friend, and she destroyed me without a second thought. You deserve to know who you're really dealing with. I nodded slowly, a grim smile forming. Send me everything you have. Over the next few days, Anna and I exchanged dozens of emails. She sent over incriminating details about Lisa's business practices, evidence of falsified contracts, and conversations that painted her in an ugly, manipulative light. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about dismantling every piece of her carefully constructed life. With Anna's help, I refined my plan. I started small, just like before. I met with our closest friends one by one, over coffee or drinks, sharing bits of the evidence at just the right moments. The shocked expressions, the uncomfortable silences, those were my cues to back off, to let them digest what I'd shown them. Jake, I'm so sorry, they would murmur, shaking their heads in disbelief. I had no idea. No one did, I'd say softly, my voice laden with quiet grief. I thought you should know. The cracks widened. I could see the doubt forming in their eyes, the way they started questioning everything they thought they knew about Lisa. And when I was sure the whispers had started to spread, I went after her career. I sent an anonymous tip to her employer, forwarding some of the emails Anna had given me. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. Her boss called me, voice strained as he tried to balance professionalism with sympathy. Jake, I'm sorry to reach out like this, but there's been some troubling information brought to our attention. We need to conduct an internal investigation, and we'd like your cooperation. I agreed, keeping my responses neutral and unassuming. Let them dig. Let them see the mess Lisa had made of her career and her life. Within a week, she was suspended pending further investigation. A few days later, she lost her job entirely. The news hit her hard. Her calls and texts became more frantic, more panicked. I could almost see her spiraling, the ground crumbling beneath her feet as everything she'd taken for granted slipped away. I ignored it all, focusing instead on the custody battle that loomed ahead. The courtroom was a battlefield, but I walked in prepared. I presented myself as calm, composed, the stable parent who'd always put the children's needs first. Lisa tried to play the victim, painting me as emotionally erratic, but it didn't stick. I was too well prepared, too in control. I have no desire to take the children away from their mother, I said firmly, meeting the judge's eyes. But I can't in good conscience leave them in her care. She's demonstrated poor judgment, both personally and professionally. I'm not asking for sole custody out of spite, Your Honor. I'm asking because it's what's best for our children. The evidence I presented, the photos, the emails, even the testimony from Anna about Lisa's instability, sealed the deal. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me full custody. Lisa was left with supervised visitation. her face ashen and eyes hollow as the verdict was read. But as I walked out of the courtroom, children's hands clasped in mine, a strange emptiness settled over me. I had won. I had everything I'd fought for. So why did I feel so hollow? The days that followed should have been triumphant. I should have felt relief, satisfaction, something. But all I felt was a gnawing emptiness, a void that grew with each passing hour. I watched Lisa move out of our house, my house, her movements slow and defeated. I stood at the window watching her drive away and felt nothing. The divorce was finalized a few weeks later. She moved into a small, dingy apartment on the other side of town, far from the life she'd once known. She was unemployed, ostracized, her social circle reduced to a few tentative sympathizers. Everything I'd set out to do had been accomplished. Yet, in the quiet of the night, I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd lost something too. My revenge had been perfect, meticulous. But as I lay there, alone in the bed we'd once shared, I realized that even victory could leave scars. With a sigh, I rolled over and closed my eyes. It didn't matter. The worst was behind me. I'd done what I had to do, for me and for the kids. Whatever emptiness remained would fade in time. I stared at the blank screen in front of me, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was time to take the final step, one that would seal Lisa's fate. The emails, the photos, every bit of evidence I had collected sat organized in folders on my desktop. There was no going back after this. But why would I? She had made her bed. Now I'd make sure everyone knew exactly who she was when she finally lay in it. I opened my social media account and began drafting the post. I started with a brief introduction, painting a picture of the life we'd shared. I described the love I'd felt for Lisa, our family, the sacrifices we'd made to build what I thought was a solid marriage. I included photos of our vacations, holidays, the kids' birthdays, images of a perfect family now tainted by the truth. Then I dropped the bombshell. I laid it all out, sparing no detail. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. I shared screenshots of texts, redacted versions of emails, and the damning photos I'd taken in Hawaii. I didn't hold back on my emotions either. I wanted people to feel my pain, to understand the depth of the betrayal. I wanted them to see her the way I did now, as a fraud, a liar, someone capable of destroying lives without a second thought. When I was done, I read it over one last time, the words burning in my mind. My finger hovered over the post button, hesitating, but only for a second. Then I clicked. It took less than an hour for the post to spread like wildfire. Notifications flooded my phone, comments, messages, shares. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, offering condolences, expressing disbelief. I can't believe this, Jake. I thought Lisa was, wow, I'm speechless, or this can't be real, right? She seems so perfect. I'm so sorry, man. Sympathy, outrage, gossip. Every reaction I'd hoped for was there. Lisa's carefully curated image shattered in real time. She had always been the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect friend. Now she was the villain in a story that everyone wanted to hear more about. The backlash was immediate. Her friends, no, our friends, began to distance themselves, unfriending her, blocking her. I saw people commenting things like, I never would have believed this if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. And I'm so disgusted by her behavior, I'm done. But I didn't stop there. I made sure that this post wasn't just limited to my friends and family. I shared it in every local group I could find, community pages, parenting groups, even forums for our neighborhood association. I wanted everyone in our town to know exactly who Lisa was. The notifications became a blur as my phone vibrated nonstop. I watched the chaos unfold from my desk, a cold sense of satisfaction spreading through me. Her life was unraveling, one thread at a time, just like she'd unraveled mine. The next morning, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Lisa. I let it ring until it stopped, then waited. A minute later, it started up again. She was panicking. Good. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice calm. What do you want, Lisa? Jake, you need to take it down, please. This post is destroying me. Her voice was hoarse, desperate. People are calling me, texting me. I can't. I'm sorry. What did you expect to happen? I cut her off, keeping my tone detached. You thought you could lie and cheat, and I'd just walk away quietly. Please, she was crying now, choking on her words. I know I hurt you, but this is ruining everything. I've already lost my job. Now people are threatening me. Good, I said coldly. Maybe now you understand how it feels to have your entire life turned upside down. There was a long, painful silence on her end. I could almost hear her trying to gather herself, to find some way to reason with me. Think about the kids, Jake, she whispered. They're going to hear about this. It's already all over the school. People are talking. Do you really want them to be known as the kids of the woman who... I felt a flicker of something at that, guilt maybe, but I snuffed it out quickly. You should have thought about them before you decided to destroy our family. Her sobs echoed through the line, harsh and ragged. Please, she begged. Please, I'm losing everything. I paused, the cold satisfaction inside me faltering. Had I gone too far? My fingers twitched, hovering over the keys as I considered her words. Then I shook my head. No, she deserved this. She deserved to feel the way I'd felt when I'd walked into that hotel room and found her with him. Broken, humiliated, alone. I don't owe you anything, Lisa, I said quietly, then hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the silence ringing in my ears. Something inside me felt off. It wasn't satisfaction, it was emptiness. A hollow ache that spread slowly like poison. But I ignored it, shoving the feeling aside. This was what I wanted, what I'd worked so hard for. I couldn't let myself regret it now. Lisa didn't go down quietly. She was too desperate, too cornered. A few days later, she began reaching out to mutual friends, pleading her case. I watched from the sidelines as she tried to regain control, spinning lies, trying to cast me as the unhinged, bitter ex who'd gone too far. But I was prepared. I had anticipated this. Whenever she reached out to someone, I made sure to send them additional proof. Emails, voice messages, anything that reinforced my narrative and contradicted hers. I crafted each response carefully, never showing anger or resentment. I played the part of the hurt, betrayed husband who was just trying to do the right thing, and it worked. Every time. Jake's not like that, one friend posted in response to her. I've known him for years, and he's always been calm, rational. He's not the one who cheated. Stop trying to make this about him, another chimed in. You're just upset you got caught. Each reply was like a nail in her coffin. I watched as her credibility crumbled piece by piece. She lashed out a few times, angry posts, attempts to defend herself, but they only made her look more unhinged. People sided with me, sympathized with me. I became the victim, and she became the villain. Just as I'd planned, but with every victory, that hollow ache grew worse. The satisfaction I'd once felt started to sour, curdling inside me like old milk. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I couldn't shake the sense of unease that gripped me. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos of us, back when things were good. There we were, smiling on our honeymoon, at the beach with the kids, her face lit up with joie de vivre, looking at me like I was the center of her world. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd believed in, felt so far away. She was gone now, replaced by this broken, desperate shell of a person. Had I done this to her? Or had she done it to herself? My mind reeled with the thought, a sickening wave of doubt washing over me. I had been so sure of my actions, so certain that she deserved every bit of pain I'd inflicted. But now, looking at these photos, I wasn't so sure. I shut off my phone and threw it aside, disgusted with myself. The next day, I did something I never thought I would. I deleted the post. Every single comment, share, and reaction vanished in an instant. I went through my emails, trashing every bit of evidence I'd collected, every message I'd sent. I cut off contact with everyone involved, withdrawing into a silence that was almost suffocating. Lisa reached out again, but I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down I knew the truth. I had become the very monster I'd set out to destroy. I had let the darkness consume me, and now there was nothing left but a shell. Weeks passed, the gossip died down. People stopped talking, stopped asking questions. Lisa's life was still in ruins, but I was no longer the one fanning the flames. I focused on the kids, on work, on anything but the hollow ache that lingered, a constant reminder of what I'd done. One afternoon, I stood outside the house, watching them play in the yard. Laughter rang out, bright, genuine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something shift inside me. Relief, clarity. I hadn't done this for revenge. I'd done it for them, for their future. The weight of the betrayal finally began to lift, replaced by something new. Not happiness, not yet, but hope. I watched my children chase each other across the lawn, their smiles wan and unburdened. I took a deep breath, letting it fill the emptiness inside me. I didn't need revenge anymore. All I needed was this. All I needed was peace. Months passed before I heard from Lisa again. I was almost surprised when her name flashed on my phone screen. She'd been quiet for so long, resigned to the ruins of the life we once shared, that I assumed I'd never hear from her again. But here she was, asking for a meeting. "Please, Jake," she'd said in the voicemail. "I need to talk to you. Just once, it's important." I could have ignored it. Maybe I should have, but something in her voice sounded different. Hollow, broken. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We settled on a coffee shop near our old neighborhood, a place filled with the echoes of better days. When I arrived, I scanned the room looking for the woman I once knew, but she wasn't there. Instead, I saw a stranger slumped at a corner table, her shoulders hunched, head bowed as if she were carrying the weight of the world on her back. It took me a second to recognize her. Lisa had always been vibrant, polished, her hair neatly styled, her clothes pristine, her presence demanding attention. But the woman in front of me was a shadow of that person. Her hair was limp, streaked with gray. The dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights. She looked frail, like a gust of wind could knock her over. She glanced up as I approached, her eyes widening slightly before settling back into a tired, resigned expression. I slid into the chair across from her, saying nothing, just watching. "Jake," she whispered, as if testing the name on her lips. It was almost like she couldn't believe I was really here. Her gaze flicked to my face, searching for something. Anger, hatred, maybe even pity. But I gave her nothing. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she cleared her throat, clasping her trembling hands together on the table. "Thank you for coming." I nodded once, still not speaking. I wanted her to make the first move, to show me what this was really about. She looked down, her voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. "I know I'm the last person you want to see. I know I deserve that." She swallowed hard. "But I needed to see you. I needed to apologize." "Apologize?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. The word felt foreign coming from her mouth like a half-hearted confession. "For what exactly?" "For everything," she said, her voice cracking. "For the affair, for lying, for ruining what we had, for hurting you, for hurting the kids. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." I leaned back, crossing my arms. I waited for the familiar surge of anger, the bitter taste of resentment. But there was nothing, just a cold emptiness. "Sorry doesn't change anything, Lisa," I said quietly. "It doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't fix the damage." She flinched, nodding slowly. I know that. "But I can't live with what I did to you, to them. Every day I wake up and it's like this nightmare that I can't escape." Her voice broke, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've lost everything. My job, my friends, even my own children barely want to see me." I didn't react. What was I supposed to say? That I felt bad for her? That I regretted what happened? I didn't. This was the bed she made, and she was finally lying in it. I just wanted to see you, she continued, almost pleading. To tell you that I'm trying to be better. I'm seeing a therapist now. I'm trying to pick up the pieces to figure out who I am without everything I thought I needed. But it's hard, Jake. It's so hard. And what do you want from me? I asked, my tone neutral. Validation? Approval? I'm not going to pat you on the back and say you're doing great. That's not my role. No, I don't want that, she whispered. I just, I needed to face you, to see the person I destroyed, and to own up to it, to let you know that I'm not that person anymore. I watched her for a long time, the seconds ticking by slowly. You say you're not that person, but what difference does it make? Do you think it changes what you did? Do you think it erases the nights I spent wondering what was wrong with me? The nights I lay awake replaying every lie, every excuse? She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, it doesn't change anything. But I want you to know that I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a second chance. I know I'll never get those. I just needed to say it. To you. To your face. For the first time, I felt something stir inside me. Not anger or hatred, just pity. She looked so small, so defeated. I could see the pain etched into every line of her face, the scars that wouldn't heal. I had won. I'd gotten everything I set out to take from her, and now she was sitting here, hollow and broken. But I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief. Just a strange sense of indifference. I'm glad you're trying to fix yourself, Lisa, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. But it's too late for us. It's too late for me to care. She nodded, her lips trembling. I know. I just... She stopped, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of her own words crushed her. I needed to say it, to let you know that I'll always be sorry. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor as I pushed it back. I appreciate you saying that, but there's nothing left between us. No hatred, no love, just nothing. She looked up at me, desperation flickering in her eyes. Isn't there any way we can, at least, I don't know, be civil? For the kids? I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. We'll always be civil, Lisa, because that's what parents do. But don't mistake that for forgiveness. You'll never have that from me. The words hung between us, heavy and final. She nodded slowly, lowering her head. I understand. With one last glance, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. This chapter, this twisted, painful chapter, was finally closed. Outside the cafe, I paused, the cool breeze brushing against my face. The street was quiet, the world around me peaceful. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me, a weight lifting, a sense of clarity washing over me. I thought about all that had happened, the betrayal, the revenge, the bitterness that had consumed me. And now there was just silence, a blank slate, a chance to move forward, to rebuild. I glanced back at the cafe, but I couldn't see Lisa through the window. Maybe she was still sitting there, staring into the empty cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Maybe she was already gone. It didn't matter. I was done with her, done with the past. There was no anger left, no bitterness, just a surprising sense of freedom, of calm. I turned and walked down the street, each step feeling lighter than the last. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free. The months that followed were a blur of routine and reflection. I settled into a new normal, one without the lingering weight of betrayal, without the constant undercurrent of anger that had defined me for so long. My life began to take on a new shape, one built around the stability I could offer my children. I took a step back from work, reducing my hours to focus more on them. I wanted to be there when they needed me, to pick them up from school, to help with homework, to simply be present. Those moments, small and seemingly inconsequential, became my foundation. They grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the emptiness returned, a dull ache where something sharp and fiery used to burn. But I forced myself to push through it. I turned down offers to go out with friends, avoided unnecessary social events. I didn't want to answer questions about the divorce or discuss Lisa's downfall. I needed time to heal, to find myself again outside the shadow of what had happened. One evening, as I sat in the living room watching my son build a tower out of Lego blocks, I felt a pang of realization. This was what mattered. Not the revenge, not the satisfaction of seeing Lisa's life crumble. It was this, the soft sound of my daughter's laughter as she chased our dog around the yard, the quiet contentment of being home. This was my second chance, my real chance. But there were still loose ends. I couldn't keep running from the ghost of what I'd done. The person I'd become during those dark months, the calculating, cold man who'd orchestrated every bit of Lisa's destruction, was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. I had to confront him to understand why I'd let myself sink so low. So I started therapy. The first few sessions were awkward, filled with long silences and tentative questions. I wasn't sure where to start or how much to reveal. But slowly I opened up. I talked about the affair, the betrayal, the months of carefully plotting my revenge. I laid it all out in stark, brutal detail. My therapist listened without judgment, her calm presence coaxing out truths I hadn't even admitted to myself. I became someone I didn't recognize, I said during one session, my voice low. Someone cruel. I wanted to hurt her, to make her pay. But now I don't know if I like who I am anymore. She nodded thoughtfully. It's natural to feel conflicted. What you went through, what you did, it's a lot to process, but it doesn't define you, Jake. You took back control in the only way you knew how. And now you're here, trying to rebuild. That shows strength. Does it? I asked, a bitter edge to my voice. I spent months destroying her. I told myself it was for the kids, for me. But I think it was just for revenge. I didn't care about the consequences. I just wanted to see her suffer. And now, she prompted gently. What do you want now? I looked out the window, watching the wind rustle the leaves of the trees outside. Peace, I want to move on. To be a better father, I want my kids to have a home that's not built on bitterness and pain. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It took time, patience, and more self-reflection than I'd ever thought possible. But gradually I began to forgive myself. Not for what I'd done to Lisa, I wasn't there yet, but for the person I'd let myself become, the darkness I'd embraced. I started to see it as a chapter of my life that was ending, one that didn't have to dictate the rest of my story. The kids were resilient, adapting to our new life with a strength that amazed me. They rarely mentioned their mother, but when they did, I made a point of staying neutral. I didn't speak ill of her, didn't undermine the fragile relationship they still had. I focused on being the stable, loving presence they needed. I began exploring new professional opportunities, ones that didn't demand the long hours or high stakes of my previous position. I wanted something that would allow me to be more present, more engaged. Eventually, I settled on a consultancy role that gave me the flexibility to work from home. It wasn't as lucrative, but it offered something far more valuable: time. For the first time in years, I felt settled. There was no need to look over my shoulder, no pressure to uphold a facade. I was just Jake, a father, a man rebuilding his life one day at a time. A year after that final conversation with Lisa, I took the kids on a vacation. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet cabin by a lake a few hours from home. We spent our days fishing, swimming, and sitting around a campfire roasting marshmallows. It was simple, uncomplicated, the kind of peace I'd almost forgotten was possible. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the water, casting everything in a soft golden light, I found myself standing at the shore, watching my children splash and play. They were laughing, free and unburdened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. This was what mattered. This was the life I'd fought for. As I sat down on a rock, gazing out at the shimmering surface of the lake, I thought back to all that had happened, the betrayal, the revenge, the chaos that followed. I could still see it all so clearly. like scenes from a movie playing out in my mind, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just there, a part of my past that no longer defined me. The sound of footsteps on the sand drew my attention. My daughter, with her wild curls and bright eyes, plopped down beside me, leaning against my arm. "Daddy, are you happy?" she asked, her voice soft, innocent. The question caught me off guard. I glanced down at her, meeting her curious gaze. Happy? I hadn't considered that in a long time. But as I looked around, at the serene water, at my son's beaming face as he waved at me from the shallows, I realized the answer. "Yes, sweetheart," I murmured, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I think I am." She grinned, resting her head against me. "Good, 'cause you smile more now." "I like it." A lump formed in my throat. I swallowed hard, pulling her closer. "I like it too, kiddo." We sat there in companionable silence, watching the sun dip lower and lower until it was just a sliver on the horizon. I felt a sense of closure, of finality, settle over me. The person I'd been, the man consumed by rage and vengeance, was gone. In his place was someone new, someone stronger, wiser, but still learning, still healing. As the sky darkened and the first stars began to appear, I knew I didn't need to look back anymore. The past was just that, past. It had shaped me, but it didn't control me. I was free to create something new, something better. When we returned home from that trip, I made another big decision. I sold the house, the one Lisa and I had shared for so many years. It was time to leave it behind, to make a fresh start somewhere else. We moved to a smaller place, one that was ours and ours alone. A home without ghosts. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still days when I doubted myself. But every time I looked at my children, I felt that doubt melt away. They were happy, thriving, and that was all the proof I needed that I was on the right path. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place one quiet evening, months later. I found myself back at the beach, the one I'd visited so many times during the stormiest periods of my life. The kids were playing nearby, their laughter carried by the breeze. I stared out at the horizon, at the endless expanse of water and sky, and let out a deep, cleansing breath. I'd done it. I'd walked through fire and come out the other side. And now, standing there on the shore, I felt something new, a sense of hope, of possibility. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I was ready to find out. I glanced over at the kids, my heart swelling with a fierce, protective love. This was my life now, one built on honesty, on strength, on moving forward. I turned back to the water, letting the sound of the waves wash over me. No more looking back, no more regrets. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, and watched the sun set, knowing that whatever came next, I was ready. Because I had finally truly let go.